In Revenge of the Sith, Anakin Skywalker falls, the Jedi Order burns, and a figure in black serves a hidden master. But what if he didn't? What if Darth Vader killed the Emperor and took the throne himself? In this version of the story, that's exactly what happens, and nothing turns out the same. Let's begin. The medical theater on Coruscant is cold and bright. Restraints bite. The first breath through the mask sounds like a knife dragged through metal. Muscle answers with machinery. The man who was Anakin Skywalker lies inside armor that now breathes for him. Padmé is dead, Darth Sidious says, savoring it. In your anger, you killed her. Memory hits like impact. Mustafar's red light. Padmé's collapse. Obi-Wan at the ramp. Grief flickers to rage. Lies, Vader says through the new voice. Sidious smiles thinly. You were too weak. In time, I will teach you control. The restraints twist and fly. The room tears itself apart under invisible hands. Sidious rises, choking, and answers with lightning that crawls through metal and nerve. Pain should end it. It doesn't. Vader reaches with the Force into the folds of the Sith's robes, finds a Kyber's pulse, and ignites red in Sidious's chest. Lightning dies. The old monster gasps and crawls. Vader pins both arms under a boot. Your arrogance blinds you, he says. Long live my empire. One stroke. Silence. For a beat, the dark side opens like a horizon. No path leads to peace. Emptiness waits where triumph should be. Outside, red-robed guards stiffen. Staves lift. Vader doesn't slow. Necks crack. Bodies fall into the city's endless shafts. Light years away aboard the Tantive 4, en route from Polis Massa, Bail Organa is interrupted by a trembling aide. A holofeed snaps to life. The council chamber of the Jedi Temple fills the projection. A figure in black sits in a high-backed seat. Citizens of the Empire, the mask declares. Emperor Palpatine is dead, murdered by Jedi Masters Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi. I defended him, I failed. As his representative, I claim the throne. The Jedi will be hunted to the last. The top of the helmet unlocks. A scarred face looks out, unmistakable to two men watching. Bail stares. Obi-Wan says nothing. Yoda's ears dip. Skywalker. Alive, Obi-Wan answers, hollow. And claiming the Empire. They change plans in minutes. Leia goes to Alderaan under Bail's care. Luke to Tatooine, hidden in plain sight. The Jedi vanish, not to yield, but to wait. Anakin always hated politics. Vader will be worse at them. The Empire will break itself if it isn't allowed to find the twins first. On Coruscant, Maz Amedda and the bureaucrats expect a puppet. They get a blade. Vader collapses the hierarchy into his gauntlets. The Senate still meets, but only to receive orders. Governors learn their power now reports to one office. Tarkin's jaw tightens. His notes multiply. Decrees follow. The Jedi are declared enemies of the state. Harboring them is treason. The Inquisitorius steps from shadows into command. Temple Guard turned Grand Inquisitor at its head. Fortress Inquisitorius on Nur hums to life. Cells, training halls. A black. Keep rising out of water where red blades bloom. Kamino's vats keep working. Orders increase. More clones. Tighter obedience, faster timetables. At first, ranks look perfect. Then the strain shows. Veterans slip away to quiet lives. New batches obey faster and think less. It functions until it doesn't. Complaints reach the throne. Chandrila speaks of rights. Ryloth speaks of occupations. Mon Mothma's words cross the Emperor's desk. He studies them, then arrives in person. Charges, displays, silence. A plaza breathes smoke when he leaves. Freight bogs under inspections. Neutral worlds go quiet after stability visits. Inner rim lanes grind forward. The mid and outer rims pay for that motion. The Jedi disappear into swamps, salt caves, and ruins. Obi-Wan watches twin suns set and calls it weather. Yoda lets Dagobah swallow his light. Ahsoka Tano listens from the shadows and builds lines no one names. Quinlan Vos learns to smile without leaving a trace in the Force. Tarkin watches supply crack and command tangle. He sees a throne being swung like a club. He he starts something careful, not raiding conscription, recruitment, pay, food, order, future. Training grounds open in stabilized regions. The pitch is simple. The Empire can be efficient again, ours, not his. Mas Amedda keeps his head down. Reports vanish into locked drawers. Messengers stop volunteering. Vader doesn't only swing fleets, he walks the restricted stacks the Jedi failed to burn. Holocrons whisper. Techniques the Order scorned and the Sith hoarded seep in. Lightning becomes a reflex. A draining pressure under his palm becomes a quiet language. He learns to hang in air the extra heartbeat no soldier expects. He searches for futures and finds only broken flashes that slide away. He visits Naboo alone. Rain on stone. He kneels by a name and says nothing. The emptiness answers. The Inquisitors hunt. Red cuts blue in places that used to be libraries. A boy ignites the hilt he swore to bury because 3 helmets turned toward a nook that should have stayed secret. The story ends the same way each time. Red, then quiet. The rebellion stops being a rumor. Arms caches grow teeth. Delays at shipyards become disappearances. Senators who never sign risky memos start signing all of them. Bail's favors turn into lanes, cells into a spine. Dissent feels like weather to Vader. He answers with garrisons and shadow, with orbital silhouettes across boulevards. With orders to Kamino they can't safely meet. When clones die younger, he tells them to try again. He hunts Obi-Wan himself. KX droids clank through cantinas behind him. Tatooine calls like a wound he keeps checking. He feels traces and leaves angrier. Kenobi is not your war, Mas Amedda whispers once. Everything is my war, Vader replies. Months pass. The Senate's gallery goes tight as a fist. Mon Mothma asks about civilian dead. He listens until she says, accountability. The session ends. He lands on Chandrila. People learn what happens to voices that don't bend. The Empire rolls downhill, heavy and blind. Tarkin moves faster. Recruitment turns into an army with paperwork and pay. The first assignment is left off the forms. By year's end, hairline fractures run through everything. Mid-rim corridors stall. Prefects send polite refusals. Analysts stop submitting reports no one reads. The rebellion begins to bite. Ahsoka returns, not with speeches, but with results. Vanished freighters, empty data vaults, crews who change flags at midnight. A chalk smile appears on a shattered wall whenever an Imperial cache mysteriously explodes. Then a rumor. Quinlan Voss seen on Braca, a world that smells like rust and starship graveyards. Vader goes with the 5-0 first because they are the last eyes that still see him as a man. Commander Appo nods across the hangar. No speeches. The scrapper settlement is too quiet, chairs overturned, pots cooling, laundry still in the wind. Spread. Vader orders. Appo relays. The blast at the corner is meant to throw, not kill. Armor screams against a cut-up trunk of a crashed cruiser. Blaster fire roars from scaffolds and hull ribs. Appo falls early. The 5-0 first pushes and dies. Fire from 3 angles. Grenades that funnel. Marksmen on catwalks. Soldiers who know Imperial doctrine because they trained under it. Civilians would run. These don't. Vader becomes movement. A wall of scrap parts for his blade. A balcony collapses into a firing line. A cargo skid turns into a battering ram. It isn't enough. When the yard finally stills, 100 muzzles lift toward his chest. Their uniforms are crisp and nameless. A familiar voice steps from the haze. Lord Vader, Tarkin says calmly, surrender. I can find you a place in the Empire you tried to run. Vader listens to fear like a choir. One red arc. Tarkin's head falls before anyone fires. Bolts fill air. He isn't where they point. He hangs a heartbeat, drops like thunder, and the shockwave knocks men off their feet. Red reflects into those who launch it. Rifles split. Catwalks fall because he pulls them down. Minutes later, only he stands. A comlink on Tarkin's body chirps. Mas Amedda's blue face flickers into view, arranged into dignity. Prepare for war. Vader crushes the device in one fist. The Empire splits at once. Governors become warlords. Fleets, become teeth. Loyalty to the Empire starts meaning two different things. Vader pulls the loyal and the frightened into a fist. Clones, hardline officers, inquisitors. Order, he thinks, can be beaten into shape. Bail's smile hides relief as the rebellion steps from shadow. Ahsoka scrawls a battle across maps with units no one saw forming. A dry dock's defectors steal a destroyer out from under a sleeping shift. On Crate, old rebel trenches cut white salt. In the swamps, Yoda hears the wind change. On Tatooine, Obi-Wan watches a boy draw a starship in dust and decides hiding is just waiting to be found. They choose Tython, Old Stone, and a Seeing Stone. Obi-Wan sits and breathes. Yoda does not leave Dagobah, but his presence steadies the currents through the Force. They do not call for help. They call for the one who will not be able to ignore it. In Bacta, Vader stares at his own blur and admits the truth. There are no good days, only less bad ones. The call strikes like a blow. Kenobi, familiar as a scar. He brings no fleet. Some wars don't want witnesses. Tython is quiet. One figure waits on the rise, tall and still. Red answers blue. No words. Vader hits like a storm front. Obi-Wan receives with patience. Stone dust and ozone turn the air harsh. Boulders fly. Hands answer. Blue finds wrist, knee, heart. Each swing costs breath. Each parry drains the battery under the armor's ribs. He knows. He refuses to stop. They edge the lip of a pit carved by time. He drops on purpose, hovers that extra beat he taught himself, and surges up behind. A cut grazes Obi-Wan's sleeve. Not enough. The duel simplifies. Blade to blade. The thing that made him feared, and the thing that made Obi-Wan endure. Obi-Wan slips inside a heavy arc and sets his point. Steel meets chestplate, red dies. Vader kneels. The helmet unlocks and lifts. Raw air bites. The face is the same ruined map. The eyes aren't. Hate leaks out like air from a seal. He looks at Obi-Wan. Something softens. Something lets go. He folds forward. Quiet follows. Far away on Dagobah, reeds shiver. A small green master closes his eyes. Obi-Wan builds a pyre. No crowd. Sparks climb and vanish. When ash is ash, he turns his face toward the core and speaks into the wind. We begin by removing his throne. On Coruscant, gates flicker. Wrong code shuttles drift. Maintenance panels lock green. Barricades refuse to open for their own troopers. Sirens start and never resolve. A hatch in the temple's underlevel swings for Ahsoka and 3 unmarked clones. The oldest stones smell of fresh smoke. The Grand Inquisitor waits under a broken skylight. So the Padawan returns. Not a Padawan, she says, and draws. White meets red across columns carved when the Republic thought itself young. He bullies. She closes distance. He leaps for air. A thrown pillar meets him mid-spring. He rises, snarling, and finds White at his throat. Drop it, she says. Stand trial. Red hisses off. Guards hear a hilt strike stone and understand something final just happened. He lives, because mercy is part of what's changing. Palace doors open, helped by an orbital tap that ends a generator argument. Faces fill the hall that haven't stood here without fear in years. Bail moves carefully, then climbs the central dais. Mas Ameda holds a script. Order must prevail. It will, Bail says, but not yours. Mon Mothma steps forward. No vengeance. Just signatures to gather and ministries to rebuild. She speaks, and the hall hears something it barely remembers. A voice that asks for ears, not knees. Above, Imperial ships split loyalties. Some fire, some power down. Some flee and discover lanes they thought they owned have changed underfoot. Camino gets a short message. Production suspended by provisional authority. Decommissioning orders roll across Topoka's platforms. That's cool. Transports lift with mismatched manifests. No one stops them. Bail stands in the old Chancellor's office with Mon and looks out at lights that pretend to be stars. In the lower city, bonfires replace statues. Locks give way to doors. Children sleep through noise that finally sounds like a planet breathing. Provisional Senate tomorrow, Mon says. Trials begin, Bail answers, and amnesty. For those who want to stop, she adds. Consequences for those who won't. In the days after, the Empire doesn't vanish, it sheds. Seals stamp over old crests. Courts fill. Some sentences are harsh, some merciful, all of them different from what came before. Clones stack rifles in hangars and face choices no chip ever allowed. Go home if home still stands. Join planetary defense on worlds that will welcome you. Teach the next guard how to think before they obey. Pick your path, a sergeant says. For once, it's yours. Masameda testifies and discovers the gallery staring back. The sentence lands. His voice breaks only once. Chandrila raises a memorial where Ash once hung. Mon bows her head not as a senator but as a neighbor. On Ryloth, crates arrive before parades. Food. Tools. No speeches. Twi'leks lift irrigation coils like treasure. Naboo's tomb receives fresh flowers daily, sometimes from a handmaiden, sometimes from a senator, once from Bail, accompanied by a girl with fierce brown eyes. She touches the name and steps back, confused by the ache. Someday, Bail promises, I'll tell you everything. When I'm ready, she says, and means sooner. He smiles. Exactly then. On Tatooine, a crate of parts appears with no sender, enough to keep harvesters running for seasons. Beru turns a coupling and nods. Good. Obi-Wan visits after dark, watches a boy chase a beetle with a stick, and answers a familiar voice carried by desert wind. I'm listening now, he says. He and Ahsoka meet under rain-slick lamps. The old order tried to be stone, she says. It broke, he admits. Then we build something that bends. They don't rename it. They don't pretend the old mistakes didn't exist. They teach discipline, compassion, attention. They don't outlaw love. They teach fear's shape and how to walk beside it without letting it steer. The Inquisitorius withers. Some run. Some surrender. A few try to sell their swords and find no buyers for nightmares. Tribunals do their work. The rest disappear into the millions trying to live better than before. Volunteers sand burn marks from council benches and polish windows until the city reflects again. Empty plinths stay empty on purpose. Students are told why. Yoda listens from Dagobah, then returns to the temple only when the halls are bright with voices again. He attends a first class, sits in a sun patch, and naps. He doesn't wake. The Force lifts him gently. Obi-Wan's eulogy carries just far enough. He taught me patience, he says, smiling at himself. I almost learned. Years pass. The Republic fills with arguments, boredom, and paperwork, the normal things that feel like air after drowning. Pirates remain. So do crooks. So do stubborn planets. There are fewer prisons. More schools. In a bright training hall, two teenagers circle with low sabers. Ahsoka watches as Leia faints and scores, and Luke adjusts and grins. Again, Ahsoka says, amused. Later, in the archives, Luke lingers on a holostill of a clone grinning beside a scruffy general. Was he? My friend, Obi-Wan says. Yes, the worst doesn't erase the best. It just makes it harder to see. Leia stands in the Senate balcony and recognizes when words stall to avoid work. Bail leans in. You'll hate this. I already do. You'll be very good at it. In the temple garden, a small stone sits beneath a sapling. Anakin Skywalker. Father. Fallen. Sometimes, Leia lingers there. Sometimes, Luke fixes a perfectly working gadget nearby just to think. Sometimes, no one comes for days, and the tree drinks light anyway. On a backworld, the last loud Inquisitor begins a speech about order and gets a boot to the chest. He laughs once, surprised by the sound, drops his saber, and walks into the sun. Kamino's decks go quiet, waves pound pylons. Lights blink out one by one. Mon announces less fleet, more rebuilding. A voice asks if that's wise, with the unknown regions still unknown. We'll greet what comes with open eyes, she says, not clenched fists. Ahsoka heads into the lanes with simple orders she wrote for herself. Help where you can. Don't make more storms. Obi-Wan drinks tea and answers questions from younglings who only know Clone Wars as the time before. He still wakes with sand in his throat sometimes. He still smiles at their questions. On Tython, wind scrubs stone clean. The place remembers anyway. What if Darth Vader was the Emperor? In this timeline, he was. A hammer that tried to be a crown. His rule burned hot and ended at the edge of a blade held by the family he left behind. After that, the galaxy learned to speak again. Not in shouts, in conversations, in votes, in lessons, in the quiet work of repair. If you enjoyed this alternate path, hit like, subscribe for more Star Wars stories, and may the Force be with you.